Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from St. Augustine, Doctor of the Church, while we read his book, Confessions. Welcome, Catholic pilgrims. We are going to hear more about Alypius today and his fall into grotesque entertainment. It can be tempting to listen to how he gets caught up in the bloody, immoral gladiator spectacles and think that we are safe from such debauchery. But that's not true. We will talk about this on the other side of our reading today from Book 6, Chapter 8, on page 121. Also, as a word of caution, today's reading is not appropriate for children. But he did not abandon his career in the world, for his parents would not allow him to forget it. He went to Rome ahead of me to study law, and there, strange to relate, he became obsessed with an extraordinary craving for gladiatorial shows. At first, he detested these displays and refused to attend them. But one day, during the season for this cruel and bloodthirsty sport, he happened to meet some friends and fellow students returning from their dinner. In a friendly way, they brushed aside his resistance and his stubborn protests and carried him off to the arena. "You may drag me there bodily," he protested, "but do you imagine that you can make me watch the show and give my mind to it? I shall be there, but it will be just as if I were not present, and I shall prove myself stronger than you or the games." He did not manage to deter them by what he said, and perhaps the very reason why they took him with them was to discover whether he would be as good as his word. When they arrived at the arena, the place was seething with the lust for cruelty. They found seats as best they could, and Alypius shut his eyes tightly, determined to have nothing to do with these atrocities. If only he had closed his ears as well. For an incident in the fight drew a great roar from the crowd, and this thrilled him so deeply that he could not contain his curiosity. Whatever had caused the uproar, he was confident that, if he saw it, he would find it repulsive and remain master of himself. So he opened his eyes, and his soul was stabbed with a wound more deadly than any which the gladiator, whom he was so anxious to see, had received in his body. He fell, and fell more pitifully than the man whose fall had drawn the roar of excitement from the crowd. The din had pierced his ears and forced him to open his eyes, laying his soul open to receive the wound which struck it down. This was presumption, not courage. The weakness of his soul was in relying upon itself instead of trusting in you. When he saw the blood, it was as though he had drunk a deep draught of savage passion. Instead of turning away, he fixed his eyes upon the scene and drank in all its frenzy, unaware of what he was doing. He reveled in the wickedness of the fighting and was drunk with the fascination of bloodshed. He was no longer the man who had come to the arena, but simply one of the crowd which he had joined, a fit companion for the friends who had brought him. Need I say more? He watched and cheered and grew hot with excitement, and when he left the arena, he carried away with him a diseased mind, which would leave him no peace until he came back again, no longer simply together with the friends who had first dragged him there, but at their head, leading new sheep to the slaughter. Yet you stretched out your almighty, ever-merciful hand, O God, and rescued him from this madness. You taught him to trust in you, not in himself, but this was much later. As you've already heard, my trade or my education is in criminology, and my expertise is in dealing with sexual violence crimes. I've been asked numerous times over the years how someone falls prey to child pornography, and my answer is always the same. It's a slow fade into it. Our culture is wildly accepting of adult pornography, and the reason for that is because so many people look at it and want to look at it. Everyone wants their sin validated, and therefore we hear justification claims that it's normal, it's healthy, it doesn't hurt anyone, etc., etc. Because so many people look at it, and don't want to feel guilty, they encourage everyone to look at it, or they just mock people who say that you shouldn't. We see that here today with Alypius's friends. They want to go to the arena. Deep down, they know that it's just not a good thing. But if they can drag Alypius and get him to watch, well, then they just feel justified in what they're doing because, hey, everybody's doing it. So, because pornography is widely accepted, people think it's fine to give it a look, just for a bit. And so they will start off with pornography that we will say, for lack of a better term, is mild. And soon enough, that doesn't satisfy. And so they go looking for more risque and then more risque. And then they become desensitized. And then they eventually wind up at the most horrific stuff that you can imagine. Nobody sets out to view that stuff initially. And nobody thinks they ever will. But they end up there. Alypius doesn't want to go to the gladiator arena. He doesn't want to see the death, blood, and destruction, and yet his friends get him there because he thinks he's strong enough to withstand it, which, as St. Augustine says, was presumption, not courage. We shouldn't put ourselves in occasion of sins. So Alypius vows to close his eyes, but our eyes aren't the only sense that we have. His ears fail him, and he opens his eyes, and then it's all over. Now, we in the modern world may think that we are far beyond that kind of uncivilized entertainment, but we aren't. Dog fights, rooster fights are all popular underground entertainment, and they're underground because, thankfully, as a culture, we recognize it. That's pretty awful, so we have laws against it, and so it's not to be done out in the open, so people take it underground, which doesn't make it better, doesn't make it right. And these poor animals fight to the death, and people stand around and watch and place bets on them. We also, as a culture, like seeing guys and girls pummel each other in extreme fighting events. People love listening and watching murder mysteries, and I don't mean like fictional ones, I mean like actual murder mysteries. Death and gore attract a lot of people. And believe me, as someone who has worked in a field where you have to come face to face with sheer ugliness, not for entertainment purposes, it actually makes me mad that people revel in this stuff. I did it for work, and it places a very heavy burden on your soul. Very heavy. When people delight in gore, death, and destruction for entertainment purposes, it makes me sick to my stomach. It is so important that we guard our hearts and minds with everything that we have. And we need to ask for the grace to withstand these things. Because we see here with Alypius, he thinks he can do it on his own, but the culture will come at you and bombard you. People that claim to love you will try to introduce this stuff to you. And so we need grace. We need lots and lots of grace. Now, some of us have to work in fields that put us in situations where we have to deal with abhorrent sin. And that sin should never be entertainment. St. Augustine tells us that when Alypius, quote, left the arena, he carried away with him a diseased mind which would leave him no peace until he came back again, no longer simply together with the friends who had dragged him there, but at their head, leading new sheep to the slaughter, unquote. We don't want to be like this, Catholic pilgrims. Instead of leading people to sin, we should be leading people to Christ. That is all for today. I'll see you back here for chapter 9, but until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.